Ciao, Em. I'm here today to talk with you about UDL and give you an overview before class. Okay, so let's talk about what Universal Design for Learning looks like. So if I go over some of the guidelines, we can do an activity in class. It's essential for some, but good for all. So let's see what that means. So I want to talk about core concepts. UDL has 3 core concepts: that the goal is what matters the most, that there's always variability in a classroom, and that the context matters. There are also 3 guidelines. We want to give access to information, build skills for students so they can internalize learning, problem solving, and be successful. In class, we're going to do an application. Okay, let's say the goal is to get fit by doing sit-ups. Who wants in? Who wants to do that? Well, if I say you have to get fit by doing sit-ups, not everyone wants to do that. So how you get fit matters. We want to have the goal of getting fit, and we don't care whether or not you do it one way or another. So on my screen, I have pictures of different sports. We can get fit in different ways. We can also get fit through dance and other things. You get the idea. Okay, now with academics, let's say the goal is to write about the stages of butterfly metamorphosis. Is the how, I'm going to call that action and expression embedded? Well, it is if I say you have to write about it. But let's make a new goal. Demonstrate understanding of the stages of butterfly metamorphosis. What are other ways or other means students could use to achieve this goal? We'll talk about that in class. Okay, the focus of the first core concept is that have a clear goal, but flexible means for reaching that goal. So the screen has a target with an arrow, but it has a map with options for getting to the goal. Okay, let's say I have a different goal, and my goal is to serve dinner. What if I share a delicious banh mi? Have it pictured on the screen. Well, maybe some people won't eat my dish. Why? Well, there's variability in our interests. Some people will have special interests or needs. For example, what if I have a root canal? What if I don't like onions? Someone might be vegetarian. Another person is lactose intolerant, and somebody else needs gluten-free food. So there's a problem if I have one dish and expect everyone to eat the same thing. In other words, variability is the rule. It's not the exception. And on the picture, there's also 2 different guys, one tall, thin, one short and stout, and they are going to definitely need different clothing, right? Variability is always there. Now I have a picture with some PET scans. We talked about that in class together. So in this situation, it's different people were asked to do the same thing, and different areas of the brain are being activated. Okay, so what do we do with variability always being there? We change the environment, not the learner. We design from the beginning with options. So if the core concept number 2 is that variability is always the rule, we have to predict variability. We have to know that it is predictable, and we're going to use our UDL guidelines to offer choices to our learners. Okay, I only have one slide for the 3rd core concept, which is that context matters. In this slide, I have a picture of kale, which would be planted in different parts of Vietnam in different seasons. And I also have a picture of 2 mice that are genetically identical, but they are reared with different nutrition and different different ways that allow them to express the genetic features of being a mouse differently. We have 2 different sizes, one possibly looking healthier than the other. So there are things that happen in the environment that also make a difference. The context matters. Okay, so UDL is a way to plan for variability. We want to be proactive, not reactive. You can design for access. Proactive planning helps. We think about the example of architecture. This slide has ramps built in as well as stairs getting to and from a building, that we need those ramps. It's essential for some, but ramps are good for all. Okay, so for example, a person in a wheelchair needing the ramp, but some people prefer to walk on a ramp or maybe ride a bicycle or push a stroller, that kind of thing. Well, teachers are inherently designers, so teachers are going to be great with UDL. Now, the 3 principles. The first one is engagement. Engagement is about why we bother learning, the why of learning. Okay, so why learn? Well, the picture here shows part of the brain, which is the basically the basic part of the brain, or the cerebellum, if you want, where emotions are noticed. Okay, if you were doing more of those PET scans. Okay, here's a picture of a roller coaster. If I say, today we're going to ride a roller coaster, how do you feel? Well, some of you feel great and some of you feel terrified, that kind of thing. What if I say, today we're going to do some karaoke? Well, some of you think that's fantastic fun and other people not so much. So our feelings are thought to be, this is the analogy, kind of like the shelves that hold things up on a wall, the cognitive shelves or glassware. And the point here is that you can't just leave your emotions when you come to school. They're always going to be there. And kids walk into the classroom and they might be feeling good or not so good. And that's going to affect their learning. Okay, so the emotions are kind of like the shelves. They're there. All right. So that's going to be the first principle about the engagement. Now, the next principle is called representation, which is the what of learning. The what of learning means kind of like what the teacher's doing, what you're supposed to be learning. Keep thinking of what as content. And right here on the brain, we're showing a picture, which is the recognition pathways. And basically, you're using your ability, your senses to understand. You're going to identify patterns of sound, light, sometimes in the elementary grades, taste, smell, and touch as well. Okay, how do we represent a fugue? Here's a picture of music. Looks like classical music. I'm not sure, piano, violin. I'm sorry, I really don't know the music that well, but we could represent music with, and this is a digital musical representation, and my link isn't working, but we would actually be able to open a YouTube link and hear a fugue being played. So the point there for representation, I could have a traditional written way. I could also have a way which is done through computer-assisted technology and or sound. I could actually hear a fugue as opposed to reading the fugue. Okay, action and expression, that's the third principle, which is all about planning, executing, monitoring your actions and skills. It's strategic. It's how you show how you learned. All right, so how do students show how they learned? Well, in one classroom, and I've got a picture here, maybe the goal was demonstrate understanding of math concepts. So the picture has a boy standing and explaining his answer. On the other hand, if my goal is the same thing, maybe I could change how students show their understanding, because first they pair, share, and then when they're ready, everyone shows an answer that the teacher can see and everyone participates. Okay, so the students in this, if my goal was the same, we also have a difference that I want to also mention, which is that one student is responding while everyone else is listening. But in the second situation, all of the children are actually participating, which is also a really important concept. Okay, the core concept number 4 is UDL is essential for some students with disabilities, but UDL is also good for all. So the picture here and the question is, what does variability look like in your classroom? Well, there's going to be a lot of variability. We already talked about how there are a lot of students who have learning difficulties. In the United States, we talked about how many are in different categories of disability, but the fact is that there's going to be a lot of variability. So which do you prefer? Do you prefer equity, where individuals are given different supports so that it's made possible for everyone to have access to participate? Or do you prefer equality? Equality says that everyone benefits from the same supports. Now, I did that very quickly. Do you prefer everyone gets the same thing, or do you prefer that people get what they need? All right, so equality is the same thing for everyone. Equity is you get what you need. And UDL is a way to give everyone what they need. Now, there are, all those guidelines that I mentioned, but there's flexibility. All right, UDL is not a checklist. It is a problem-solving framework. You don't use all of the guidelines. Some guidelines are better than others depending on the situation. That's it. I hope you bring your questions to class. After we go over some of the questions, we're going to do an activity where you explore these ideas with a website that we're going to use in class. All right, thank you. See everyone tomorrow. Bye-bye.